Hello my fellow eclectic souls, my name is Adrianna and I'd love to welcome you back today. We are finally getting into some sewing videos, so if you would just take the moment to like and subscribe, as we have a whole ton, I was going to say a poop ton, of videos coming ahead. Okay guys, so I just wanted to jump right into this today. Obviously we can see the shirt is way too big for me. You can see through the armpit holes and it is obviously way too long. So we're going to go ahead and use that extra fabric later on. Here, sorry for me dancing, this shirt is also too long for me. I'm not a fan of shirts hitting me on my hips. It just doesn't, it's not flattering. So we're definitely going to go ahead and crop that as well. And lastly, this is one of my favorite casual shirts. I have worn it way too much, usually by tucking it into my pants, so it's gotten very stretched at the bottom. But we can use that extra fabric again to do the ruffle crop top. Now the supplies that you'll need are some pins, scissors, some shear scissors used for velvet fabrics, a tape measure, and a ruler. Also, you'll need a flat surface, which I'm going to be using that underneath. Now, with a tape measure, you'll want to go ahead and measure the distance from your shoulder and to your waist. So, as you can see here, we're going to go ahead and start from the collarbone and measure down to the waist. If you need to bend and do some stretches to locate your waistline, go ahead and do that, and it's also good for your health. Why not? Jumping right in now, we're going to go ahead and lay the oversized shirt down, and we're going to use that measurement we just got and measure where we're going to start to cut. So from the collarbone down, you can see I already have a pin there, so we're going to adjust that. And just add a few more pins so that you can start. You can go ahead and be wild and just cut, but I'm going to make sure I get this straight and use the ruler for reference. Now that you have your dots to cut straight, you can go ahead and use the scissors or the shear scissors to go ahead and just chop that through. And you'll see all that extra fabric that is being cut off. That is what we are actually going to be using for the ruffle. So make sure that you end up saving that and setting it to the side. Now it's always a good rule of thumb when cropping a project, you want to make sure you're trying it on to make sure you didn't do it too short. I always do the arms up. I didn't do it here, but to make sure you don't flash anybody. So this fit good. Now, working to alter the oversized shirt, you'll definitely want to grab a t-shirt that you greatly appreciate how it fits your body. You'll see later on that I ended up using the velvet periwinkle shirt that's actually above it, and if I did that I would have totally skipped adding the arms, but we'll get to that later. So when you're doing this, you want to make sure you're pinning the corners of the shirt you're using as a pattern to make sure that it doesn't move as you are cutting, so you are able to get the most accurate measurements of that shirt. You'll also want to pay attention to the collar. Make sure the collars are aligned and that the graphic on the shirt beneath it is straight. You don't want it lopsided and have to throw the project away. Now, when you're cutting, you want to make sure you are adding seam allowance. Seam allowance is going to be the space where you are actually sewing the thread. So then it's not taking away any of the body measurement, meaning it doesn't get too small. So for the armhole, you'll go ahead and cut that off, but again, I ended up just needing to leave that on later on. But if you are also going to go ahead and do the armhole on a t-shirt like this, not adding a ruffle to the sleeve, then go ahead and cut along. Now that you've finished cutting, you'll go ahead and flip the shirt inside out. And you'll want to go ahead and align the edges and pin them down, because we are finally going to get to sewing. On your sewing machine, you'll just go ahead and use a straight stitch and sew completely along the edge. Now that we completed sewing the side seam of the shirt, we're going to move on to the ruffle. Now, using the piece we cut off from the main shirt, you'll go ahead and slice it into one long piece. You're going to be cutting this into different sections, so depending on how much excess fabric you have, you can make it that long. I made it 3 inches thick, and by making it 3 inches thick, I took about 1 inch for seam allowance and hemming, so in total at the end my ruffle came to about 2 inches. So if you want something longer, definitely make the width a lot larger for you, and just go ahead and pin along and cut. So we end up having 2 long pieces, like spaghetti. And we'll go ahead and then sew the edges together on both ends, creating this huge circle, basically. So there are the ends connected, and you can see I've started to kind of fold along the edge to create a hem. To make it easier, you can always go to an ironing board and iron it down so it's much easier to sew. Here you can see the length that I have. It's almost double, slightly larger than double the size of the shirt. And we're going to use this long thread that is just about the same size as the ruffle loop. And we're going to go ahead and start feeding it through. There's a technique online you can follow on using your sewing machine, but I cannot figure it out on my sewing machine. We have a love-hate relationship, so I decided to go ahead and do this by hand. As you see, we're kind of skipping through, and you can kind of see on the needle it's starting to take the effect of the ruffle. Once you've gone ahead and fed the thread completely through, you'll see it just like so. You'll actually grab the part of the thread, the top of the thread, and just start pulling it through. Sorry it didn't really capture it here, but you'll get the gist of it. You'll start to pull the thread and you'll see this ruffly effect come together. You may have to start gathering more so towards the end of the thread and start bringing it back that direction, because you'll need extra thread once you get through the entire loop. They're so cute. Once you have finished pulling the thread and creating the entire ruffle, you'll find the part where you sewed the loops together and attach those to the side seams of the shirt and pin in place. When I'm pinning, I'm actually pinning above the thread for the ruffle, just so that I could end up pulling that out once I've sewn it in place. When you are attaching this to the main shirt, make sure the loop is not twisted, because I had such an issue making sure that it was facing the right direction. And to mention that as well, when you are attaching the loop, make sure the nice sides of the shirt, the front facing sides of the shirt, are facing each other. So you have the inside of the shirt and the inside of the shirt together. And once you have that pretty aligned, tighten the ruffles to the size of the shirt if it was a little bit large. And then you'll go ahead and evenly distribute the ruffles on the shirt so you don't have any pieces of the shirt where it's maybe more ruffly and flat on some portions. Make sure it is completely distributed. You can see here where I pinned above the line of the thread, and you can kind of get a sneak peek of what it will look like after. Now we're done with that, we can go ahead and sew. Now that we sewed that all together, find the end of the thread and just chop the little knot off. And you can start taking the thread out. I had to use the needle as just pulling it from the start was kind of stuck, so do what you need to do to get that thread out. And right there, it got a lot easier to go ahead and pull through. And we're all done with the waist ruffle. So excited. Now, this is where I talked about earlier that I should have left some of the fabric there. I didn't really need that on. So using the old sleeves, I'm going to just set it behind and chop the portion that I need to match this other shirt that I much rather appreciated. And you go ahead and pin as well, or you can start cutting. I like to avoid doing that just so that I don't cut the shirt underneath. And begin cutting, allowing for seam allowance as well. You'll want to go ahead and copy that onto the other sleeve. So you have two. Snip, snip, cut, cut, do a little dance because you are almost done. Now that we have two, you'll go ahead and just end up flipping this item inside out as well as the shirt. And you'll find the midpoint of the sleeve and attach that to the top portion of the shirt. Once you have completed pinning, you can go ahead and sew them together. Once you have completed the sewing process of the sleeve to the bodice of the shirt, you'll use any leftover loopy fabric to create the ruffle effect again for the sleeves, feeding through the thread and again repeating the same process as you did with the waistline. Once we are all done with that, our shirt should be completed, and be so proud of yourself because we're done.